So baseball is back officially, and so is free agency. So the hot stove has officially been reignited. There, it took me only 10 seconds to say what our title was on the show, but yeah, the hot stove is back. There hasn't been any big names really off the board in free agency yet since the lockout ended. But hey, baseball's back. The moves are coming in hot. Some trades are happening. Anyway, welcome to Massholes with Mikes. I'm Jordan Landry, joined by Jeremy Guerin, here to talk about some baseball after our Celtics podcast dropped the other day. We are here with baseball. No, that's the only mention of basketball. I can assure you of that. Um, but yeah, so I guess we'll start with a big move that happened today at the time of recording, Saturday morning slash afternoon, depending on where you are from. Yeah, I don't remember what time it was. I had just woken up when the trade happened. But Mitch Garver, in perhaps surprising fashion, going from Minnesota to the Texas Rangers. I'm trying to remember the names of the prospects off the top of my head. I can't remember them.
It was the IKF, whoever that
Oh,
guy's name is.
Isaiah Kiner Falefa,
Yep, and then some other
and
dude that I can't
and I
remember.
think it was Henry Rodriguez. I think that was his name.
It was a
Henry
pitcher, and it was a
Rodriguez, a
right-hand
pitcher.
pitcher. Yeah.
Pitcher going to Minnesota. Now, in all seriousness, that trade blew me away. Like seriously, like with the way that I thought the Rangers kind of got fleeced in the Gallo trade, like the best because they also gave up a solid reliever. I think they kind of made up for it by getting Mitch Garver on the very cheap. So Mitch Garver, I think he's a top 5 catcher. If you read my article at primetimesportstalk.com, I think I ranked him third. A little spoiler alert. Um, yeah, I think he's a top 5 catcher, maybe even top 3. And
In terms of
the
offensive
Marine,
or all around?
I mean, he's a solid defensive backstop. I don't think he's, like he's not Jonah Heim level. I mean, speaking of the team that he just got traded to, but he's definitely a solid catcher back there. He's definitely more well known for his offense, but the fact he got traded for virtually nothing, like the Twins, you better hope Ryan Jeffers announces something because I mean, he's never had the volume to really, cement himself. I overrate the hell out of him, I'll admit, but that's a guy who, from an offensive standpoint, that's a borderline all-star bat that you just traded for, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, who you could have gotten the same guy in Andrelton Simmons. You just let him go to the, just let
The
him go to
Cubs.
the Cubs for $4 million. So, and then and then another pitching prospect. But I would like to hear your thoughts on that trade.
So full disclosure, I texted in our group chat. I know you were just waking up, but I at the time of the trade, and I agree. I think it was like noon, maybe like 12:30 when this trade came across the wire, and I said, "Who in the world is this guy?" Because I've never heard of him. And friend of the show, Sean, he could not be with us today, but he kind of volunteered his, I guess, his 2 cents from a distance, and he said that he's basically Walmart Andrelton Simmons, which is exactly what you just said. So in my mind, especially with Texas, they spent what, like $539 million before the lockout. If you want to combine, who was it? Cole Calhoun, Simeon, Seager, and one other guy that I'm blanking on right now, pitcher
John
John Gray. Yes. If you combine those 4 guys, they spent over $500 million, and they have just really been stacking up assets. Garver's another one now. I think that Texas is. I think you said it as well. That lineup is going to be pretty nasty. That being said, I look forward to it strengthening my anti-Mike Trout bias when they finish ahead of the Angels in the division, because I think that would be very funny. But other than that, I know it's technically the biggest quote-unquote trade so far this offseason. Still not really a major one, and we're still waiting for those major guys to come off the board after the lockout ended. What was it, Thursday? Thursday.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think with this trade specifically, the issue with Texas still is their pitching staff is very weak. Like John Gray is the
Oh
ace
well,
of that
Jordan,
staff.
Jordan, 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 Jordan. They signed Martin Perez.
Oh, that's
It's
right.
all
They
it's
brought
all
Martin Perez
solved.
back. Okay, little sidebar here on Martin Perez real quick. I'm in a sabermetrics group chat on Twitter and we talk. I'm very inactive, but I pop in from time to time. And one of the people in that chat is the diehard Yankees fan, and he's talked about how because Chris Bassett. We'll probably talk about that for a little bit later. Just got traded to the Mets, and Sean Manaea, supposedly rumored to be going to the White Sox. I don't think that's official yet, but there's been talks that that's fairly close. They're at least negotiating on that kind of trade. And he's like basically like up in arms about the fact the Yankees haven't added anybody to the rotation. So I go, Martin Perez is still there. And they're like, he's a Ranger, Jordan. How could you not know this? And I'm like, I literally have his name muted on Twitter because of Section 10 cronies trying to tell me that he was good at baseball. I checked to make sure. I literally have Martin Perez muted on Twitter, like his name, so I can never see anything about him again.
That's a tough look, but not necessarily a loss. I will say it's not like
No,
you're really losing anything by not having Martin Perez.
Here.
Exactly,
I'm definitely gaining by not getting Martin Perez updates, but. Yeah, so the Rangers, I mean, their pitching staff, I mean, John Gray's a solid arm. I question how well he'll do there. I'm talking about going from, a home run ballpark to a home run ballpark. He went from Colorado to Texas. Eventually, he'll probably make a pit stop in Arizona before finally going to the East Coast, where he'll end up in Baltimore at Camden Yards, which is another bandbox because that man just loves giving up home runs.
Or the short porch at Yankee Stadium. But if he goes to Arizona, he can make a stop and you can see him, and that's what really matters.
That is true. I do like John Gray, but that's neither here nor there. But that rotation's still very suspect to me. They got UVA legend Josh Spores in the bullpen, so I will be tuning in whenever I find out that he's going in the 6th inning. But that lineup's scary, and adding Garver just kind of the cherry on top of that. But if he can give you 100 games, 110 games, which he's never done. Now that could be a big reason why his value wasn't so high. But if he can give you 100 games of that offense, and you get like another 60-ish, or I should say 100 starts, and then like 60-ish starts from Jonah Heim with that defense, that's a pretty decent backstop tandem right there. It's just their pitching staff is still very suspect at best. So
they're gonna be like one of those Red Sox teams where I guess you want to say like the 2020 Red Sox, where their pitching staff was so bad they had to score 7 runs to win. They were giving up like 5 runs a game, and you could basically lock it in and set your watch to it, which is incredibly scary. But if you could score 7, if you're the Red Sox, you had a fighting shot, which is just not a place you want to be in. Speaking to you Rangers fans, like the one person who might listen to this, as a Sox fan, you do not want to be there. You just don't.
No, you don't. Because it's exciting in the regular season because you face a lot of 3s and 4s and 5 starters. But when you go into the playoffs and you're facing, I mean, I'm trying to think of a 1-2 punch. Let's just say, for sake of argument, you go into the first round of the playoffs, you're facing the Red Sox. You get Chris Sale and Nate Eovaldi your first 2 games. Like, they're going to find a way to at least keep that offense down and then just pummel that pitching staff. Like, you're not going to be able to score 6, 7, 8 runs against Chris Sale and Nathan Eovaldi in the playoffs, or even Garrett Cole and Luis Severino if he's healthy. Like, there's it's just hard to win a World Series without a pitching staff. And I mean, they're probably a year or 2 away as it is. They're just trying to field a competitive team, especially because last year they probably lost some money.
Yeah, exactly. They just haven't been good for God knows how long. The last time they were relevant, Ron Washington was their manager. Actually, no, that's a lie. Yeah. Chris Bannister was, because that was when they were having all those flare-ups with the Blue Jays. And that was amazing.
That's right. 2016, I think, was the last time they made the playoffs, and Josh Donaldson had that mad dash home on a grounder to second or whatever it was, shortstop. I don't remember. But the Rangers, making, I mean, and I'm proud of them because, I mean, you think a lot of these teams, they get so content with being mediocre that they will just kind of always live with having a top 5 pick and
Pirates.
Yeah, seriously. Well, I think that's just because Ben Sherrick doesn't know how to field a major league roster, but he just got lucky in 2013. But I think a lot of these the Rangers are a small market, as case in point, they're $500 million investment this offseason in random players. But these teams that have been mediocre for like 4, 5, 6 years, what direction are you trying to go in? And they look like they were officially blowing it up by trading Gallo last year. And then now they obviously got Seager, they got Semien, they got now Mitch Garver in a trade. John Grace, I mean, still a good signing. I don't want to, act like he's not a good pitcher, but curious to see.
They're just making they need a big guy. They need a big guy that they can rely on as an ace, and they just don't have it right now. But in the AL West, when you already have Houston, you have Oakland might be a little bit of a fire sale, so I'm not going to count on them like I have in years past to always be like, between 80 and 90 wins, which is what they had been relied upon to be under Bob Melvin now that he's gone. You look at this AL West and you have Houston and who else? Who else is really going to be that second team the Rangers have a chance
Seattle
to step
probably.
up there. Exactly. Seattle should be the odds-on favorite, you would think, but Texas has a chance to go, all right, let me slide in here a year early maybe make a late wild card bid, and then we'll kind of build on that for the future. And it's something interesting to see.
Sometimes it's all about just making yourself a destination. You see that lineup is sick. I don't know, the pitching market looks like next winter. Supposedly the market next winter is like really bad, which is why I want the Red Sox to invest now.
We'll get to that.
Not,
we'll get to that at the
yeah,
end. Definitely
yeah.
got to
There's
get to
not
that.
much next winter, but it's all about making yourself a destination, especially if you're on like, let's just say there's a pitcher out there. This is a hypothetical. I have no idea who I'm talking about when I say this, but a pitcher out there requests to trade, and you're on their no trade list, and they have to obviously approve to get traded there. If you show that you're an ace away from being a contender, hey, that ace might approve a deal to go there. So we'll see. We spent way too much time talking about the damn Texas Rangers.
Yeah, we did. We got to move on.
Yeah. So I guess we'll move on and talk about the. I'm trying to think of what the next trade would be. I mean, we talked about the Bassett deal.
Let's go big picture here real quick, because we honestly didn't hit this at the start, but the lockout is over, and we can actually talk about this stuff again because things are happening. I guess big picture thoughts on the lockout, the CBA that they agreed to. I, for one, was actually starting to be a fan of the 7-inning doubleheaders. And I know that they agreed on like luxury tax, prospect pool money, all that. I'm going to let the baseball people handle that, and I'm going to talk about the stuff that I cared about coming out of the CBA, which was the actual game itself. I actually liked the 7-inning doubleheaders. I even didn't mind the runner on second base and extra innings, and I understand that was a little bit more controversial. That's fine. I liked the 7-inning doubleheaders. Those weren't bad to me. I'm a little bit upset that they're going back on that. The pitch clock, I know that they're going to try and implement that starting next year. I want that as well. I think... What was the number I saw? I think 14 to 19 seconds. 14 seconds to release a pitch is ridiculous. I don't know how people expect you to do 14 seconds. Being a pitcher, it just doesn't work. I think somewhere between like 25 to 30 seconds is fine by me. I think that's fair. And since you're starting to groom guys at the younger farm system levels to have that pitch clock, maybe it'll be ingrained in them by the time they get up to the major leagues. But yeah, in terms of pace of play and I guess like the game on the field, those would be my big takeaways, and I didn't hear anything concrete about the shift. Did you?
Shift's banned.
I like that. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's kind of fun. We'll see what happens. I want to see how it works.
What I was thinking in regards to the shift, and what I think you got to, I think it's a little bit overzealous to ban it outright.
So here's my question, since you know more than me. What I was kind of picturing is divide the field down the middle. You still have two guys on each side of the bag, second base bag, and you can choose where to put those guys. So if you wanted to put the second baseman in short right field, you just can't bring the shortstop over on the other side.
I think you can still do that. I haven't read enough about the specifics of everything, but I think with regards to the shift, I honestly was totally okay with there being three guys on the right side of the infield. What I wanted was there to be like a range that you could go to. Like you can put three guys on the right side of the infield, but they all got to be in the dirt. Or like maybe go like 5 feet in the outfield. You like draw like a little line out there, and you got to keep your feet on that line or something like that. Just I think it's almost it almost bails out the offense too much. I know it's really hard to hit. I don't want to understate, undersell how hard it is to it's not as simple as just going the other way. Like you have to react to a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, and some of these guys throw like 92-mile-an-hour sliders. Like you can't just poke it the other way. It's not Kyle Hendricks out there every day, chuck an 88-mile-an-hour poop and you just swing it and flop it down the left line. It's not that easy. Poop. It's not that simple, but I just need to see it play out, truthfully. And I agree. That's the case with a lot of things. And even the pitch clock, to an extent, I need to see it play out. I was not necessarily anti-pitch clock, but I didn't necessarily want it in the major leagues. Like I wanted it in AAA, so that way, all the elder statesmen like the Wainwrights and the Prices of the world. I mean, because not every single, those guys take forever, but
I know. And Price has said multiple times, I believe, he's like, we can't install the pitch clock. That would be very dangerous for our health and stuff like that. It's like, okay, I know you've been doing this like the same way for years, but also just stop shaking off signs. I feel like that's what we just kind of want, is when you shake off 4 signs and then you decide on one, that's when it gets to be a little bit tedious and you have to wait and stuff like that. And I understand that there's an art to being deliberate on the mound when the guys are when you're in the stretch, because you want want to get guys off balance. You don't want to be taking the same time
I don't think
every
the
single
pitch
time.
clock
But
exists when there's guys on base.
they said
Is
they were
there?
going to lengthen it when there were guys on base. It would be, I think they said 15 to 20 seconds when you're in the windup, and 20 to 25 seconds when you're in the stretch. Was one of the ideas that I heard thrown out there by, I think, Jesse Rogers. This was before they actually had agreed to the deal. Those are one of the things that MLB reportedly wanted. So, I mean, like you said, I think the best case is let it play out. You know, it's already a wonky year. You're not going to start on time. You're still going to get all 162 games, which I'm shocked at. But you use the shorter seasons in the previous years to kind of implement some of these, like the 7-inning doubleheader rule, and I think people were really receptive to it. Now, it's on you being crusty to go and bring it back all of a sudden, but let it play out and see what happens. I mean, the only way to actually see whether or not there are results, whether it affects pace of play, is to implement it. And you know what? I think that's what they're going to do on a couple of these rules here.
Yeah, and I do, to an extent, kind of appreciate the installment of the pitch clock, just because, watching David Price for those few years in Boston, in between every pitch, he has to take his hat off, grab his jersey, wipe his eyes and his bald
Spit
head,
a couple times, adjust
spit
his
a couple
balls.
times, stare up at Dave O'Brien in the booth, say hi,
spit another couple times.
Spit another couple times, scratch his butt, and then finally look into the catcher
to shake off three signs.
Shake off three times, then step off, and then do it all again, and
I'm assuming it was probably worse with Price than we would like to. Better with Price than we would like to admit. It's not as bad as we think. It's only because Sale was throwing right in front of him every fifth day that he was so fast and he would just take the sign and go that you were like,
and then even Nate, and then Nate's pretty quick on the other side of him too. So you go Sale, who's quick, Price, who's pretty deliberate no matter what the situation is, and then Nate, who's pretty quick. So it made David Price look like Clay Buchholz out there in terms of
Dice K.
Dice K in terms of in terms of pace of play nonsense. But yeah, I mean, the lockout being over is huge, and I don't even know like all the specifics of it. I got to the point where I was like, I'm not on a side anymore.
Sam,
figure this out.
I said that to you and everybody.
I was still more like, my buddy and I talked about how, like, if we set it -10 to 10, and -10 is I'm 100% on the player side, 10's 100% on the owner side. He was probably like a 4 because he was more pro owner than I am. I was probably -6 or so. By the end of the lockout, I was like -2. So I'm like, I'm still pro player. I was
player, gonna say -3. Yeah.
I'm like, just sign the deal, get a deal together.
Did you see the type of money that they were quibbling over? And this is the last thing I'll say on the lockout because we got to move on. But
yeah,
apparently something about like the luxury tax. The owners wanted 230, and the players wanted 232, and they wouldn't sign the deal because of that. And it's like, guys,
the players also wanted it to go up higher every 5 years. They wanted to go higher. So I mean, it's easy to look at 230 versus 232 and be like, really? But I think the difference was like 252 versus 240 in year 5 or something. The owners did not want to go all the way up to 250, and I don't even remember what the deal was, but I know that was what the last time I gave a damn about the negotiations were that, and I'm like, I don't. Just agree to something. The only person that's getting punished here are I shouldn't say only person, but the 3 groups of people getting killed by this. minor leaguers, ballpark vendors, and the fans. Like, those were the 3 people, because you're talking about all the jobs that are being lost. But the longer the lockout goes, and on top of that, the minor leaguers, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are getting the raw end of the deal no matter what. Like, major leaguers, even guys on the 40-man roster are making a decent amount of money. Minor leaguers are living paycheck to paycheck, getting second jobs and whatnot. And then obviously the fans, because we spend a lot of money to watch our teams and wear their jerseys. Like, I spent $200 and something on the 2 jerseys ahead of me just for both of them to not be on my team anymore after 1 year.
Let's move on to the other players that changed teams, though, because honestly, if we went through all the jerseys that I have that the players no longer there, we would be there a long time.
Yeah. So the next trade, I think we should talk about the Bassett trade, and then
we'll go free agency. Yeah.
And then we'll go to free agency. The Chris Bassett trade. I don't know the second prospect, like what position he is, but JT Ginn goes to the A's and Chris Bassett to the Mets. Now that's a big get for the Mets. I think they're already pretty deep at the pitching in the rotation. They got DeGrom, they got Scherzer, they got 2 top 5 pitchers, probably 2 top 3 pitchers in the league, at least through the next 2 years. And Carlos Carrasco, I know he had a bad year. I think it was mostly just injuries. He'll be fine if he stays healthy this year.
I forgot he's on that team. Wow.
Yeah, Taijuan Walker, who was an all-star last year and then kind of fell apart in the second half, but he if he bounces back, you have those 4, and then you had Chris Bassett, who also was an all-star last year. That's a pretty deep rotation. You got 4 all-stars in 2021 in your rotation for the 2022 season. That's a great get for the Mets, and I think they've decided that they are just going to. I mean, it's weird to say this because they haven't made the playoffs in 4 years or 5 years, but they've just decided that their mantra is just going to be, let's win now every year. Because last year's roster, they should have made the playoffs with it. This year's team,
they were on track to make the playoffs, and then they had one of the most ungodly collapses we had ever seen. It felt like the Mets and the Red Sox were trading losses throughout most of July. Well, not most of July. The second half of July, all of August, and all of September. The Red Sox figured it out in September to scrape their way in. I have no idea what in the world the frickin' Mets were doing, because holy crap, they sucked. It was unheard of, right? That they were like first.
Their fans.
They were first place like at a certain point in the year, and no team that had been first place that late in the season had ever missed the playoffs or something, or had not won, and they just cratered.
And then the Mets.
Mets happened. Mets gonna Met. I agree. They're lengthening out their rotation with Scherzer, especially to replace Stroman, who's on the Cubs, which I, again, forgot about because it had been so long since the lockout happened that he went to the Cubs, and I completely forgot about it. But
don't worry, if you follow him on Twitter, he'll remind you.
Yeah,
he'll
exactly.
also remind you that the Mets chose Max Scherzer over him. Like, okay.
Yeah, I would too. Sorry, I just would. That dude's a different animal.
With all due respect, Marcus, and I like you. I like him. I think he's a really good pitcher.
It's not Max Scherzer.
I would much rather have Max Scherzer.
Agreed.
All right, I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, that was it. I was just gonna move on to the free agent moves when you were ready.
Oh yeah, just the last thing on the Mets, and I think, and I guess I'll tie this into the Red Sox a little bit because I know a lot of Red Sox fans were complaining about how they really wanted one of these Oakland A's starters. You know what? I'll scrap it. I'll say it later when we talk more about the Red Sox. We'll get into free agency.
Yeah.
A lot of these lower level guys, like these mid tier relievers, bottom tier relievers, are getting signed now. So we don't really need to talk about like Jerry's Familia going to the Phillies, Alex Palme to the Rockies.
Big ones.
We don't need to talk about that.
Rodon.
We can talk about Jose Iglesias to the Rockies. Might I throw out there? No.
Rodon.
Yeah,
I saw.
Rodon's the big one.
Was it this morning or yesterday morning?
It was yesterday afternoon.
Passan broke that one. Was it 2 years, 44? And some people.
With an opt-out after one.
Did you see the Heyman tweet today? You may have been at work, so I'm not gonna fault you if you
where
haven't.
He's catching up on credit.
No.
36 hours after the
no, that I respect him for because of the new job that I have that I can't really talk about. We get mad, or I personally get annoyed when people don't give us credit. So I appreciate that Heyman will at least go back and say it.
I just find it so funny. It's been like a day and a half, and he's like, "Oh, by the way, this guy reported that." It's like John, and we know. I mean, I get being, the validation of it being attributed to you. I just think it's so funny that he'll wait like so long.
Okay, so here's the tweet. Ready? So this was at 1:27 Eastern time today. Heard from a small market GM concerned by the big market Giants' ability to give $44 million over 2 years, parentheses, plus the opt-out, to Carlos Rodon, especially now that the luxury tax threshold is up $20 million to $230 million. It'll be harder for the little guy to compete, the GM said, and to which I say, wham! What are you
seriously,
what,
man?
2 and 44, $22 million a year, and a short-term deal that you can get out of with an opt-out? Come on, guys. Are we really going to say that this is a bad contract for the small team? Like, the Rays could have paid that. The Rays are reportedly in on Freddie Freeman, who is the big jewel of this free agent class. One of the big jewels of this free agent class. If the Rays can try and go pay up for Freddie Freeman and compete with the Dodgers for him, guess what? You can pay Carlos Rodon 2 years and $44 million. But I do like the signing for the Giants.
The Rays gave Charlie Morton $17 million a year for like 3 years a few years ago. So I mean, it's like small market teams. You know the easiest way to net big free agents if you're a small market team, just give them a contract. Just offer them a contract. Exactly. I mean, even like especially an organization like the Rays, I don't even think you'd have to be the top bidder Like you see all the pitchers that just go in there and just dominate. You're telling
Tax
me
free in
if the
St.
Rays,
Pete as well.
yeah, if the Rays offered Rodon, and I mean, I guess I shouldn't speak for him, but if the Rays offered him 2 years at 38 million with an opt out after 1 year, I would be willing to bet that they'd be right there to the end with the Giants, and he might even pick the Rays over them. I mean, the
He doesn't
tax
have to
probably
bat.
helps.
He doesn't have to
He doesn't have
bat
to
if
hit.
he's
Well, they don't have to bat anyway.
That's true. That's another thing.
Universal DH.
DH. Yes, good call.
That's a big one too.
So I'm gonna
we didn't talk
run.
about.
I'm gonna run through the big, in my opinion, the couple of the big free agents, and I want your opinion on where you think they're gonna go. So Freeman to start. Where do you have him landing?
It's funny. I really, 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 for the longest time, was like, he's gonna
Yankees?
go back to Atlanta.
Oh,
There's
okay.
no chance he signs anywhere else. I think he's going to the Dodgers.
So
I
do I.
really think they're gonna.
It's
I
so
really
scary.
think that he's gonna sign him. He's gonna sign there. It's crazy to think about because they got. I mean, they lost Seager, but I guess to replace Seager with Freddie Freeman, who I know he's not as potent of a hitter as Seager is when Seager's healthy, but Seager's never healthy.
So
Freddie
who's
Freeman for
their
160
shortstop now? Because I'm having it's
Trey
probably
Turner.
Taylor, right? Oh no,
Trey
yeah,
Turner.
because he played second base.
And,
Yeah,
now there's second baseman Max Muncy
and Turner at third, who you know I love. That's a scary infield. I mean, it's a scary team, but that's such a scary infield.
On top of it, Cody Bellinger's like at the top of my list for bounce back candidates. Like he was hurt last year.
Yeah.
And there had to have been something mental going on with like he
Still
had
got
a million
Mookie,
leg injuries.
still got Chris
Still have
Taylor.
Mookie, still Chris Taylor. You still have Will Smith, who honestly I put him second on my catchers ranking list. I think he'll be number one by midseason. That dude can rake.
And
And I
then
know
you're
they
getting
lost Scherzer, but the rotation's still got Bueller, still has Urias, still has Kershaw. I think they signed Andrew
Dustin
Heaney.
May. He's coming back from Tommy John, right? Yeah.
And then Andrew Heaney. I mean,
Yeah,
he's there.
he exists. He's breathing.
They could
He's in
chuck
the
David
locker
Price
room.
back in the rotation, but their top four is pretty good. Tony Gonsolin's still there. That's a pretty good pitcher too.
So-
They're stacked.
I agree. I think Freeman is unfortunately going to go to the Dodgers. The other big guy, because of the universal DH now, is Nelson Cruz. And something from Rosenthal I saw today, the Dodgers think that they can sign both of them. How scary would that be? Good God. But I don't know. I think Nelson Cruz is heading back to the AL. He hasn't left there his entire career because he's been a DH, and I honestly think that he could be going back to Seattle. That's just that's a weird feeling for me, and I have nothing to base it on other than it'd be kind of cool. I'm not going to lie. I don't know where you think Nelson Cruz is ending up.
Supposedly, he's been negotiating all week with NL teams.
I know,
That's
because they need DHs. There's like such a big market now for him, but I don't know. We'll see.
You know what? The one NL team that I've seen like actually pop up in a report about Nelson Cruz is Milwaukee because he was there. That's where he started his career. Or that's the organization
really?
he started
Okay.
in. He started in the organization with the Brewers. I don't know if he ever played for them, and then he got traded somewhere. I think it was to Houston.
I was going to say
I don't
Texas.
remember.
Was that
I
when
don't
he-
remember.
Okay.
I think he was on two teams, and then he broke out in Texas.
I got it. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Oddly enough, and this probably won't happen, but I'm thinking of NL teams that are kind of on the bubble that desperately need offense. I think
Phillies?
the St. Louis Cardinals are going to make a play for him.
He seems like a guy that would fit in there. A really veteran group. You already got Wainwright and Yachty. I mean, you probably want to give Molina a couple of DH days a week now because of his age and just kind of where he's at in his career. But I mean, Nelson Cruz to bring off the bench or to have as your regular DH is never a bad option. Even at the age of what, 42, 43 now?
He's 42, and he could still mash.
Exactly.
So
You compare him with like Pujols and stuff, and that's just scary. Like the difference in quality at this stage of their careers. I'm gonna go rapid fire, short stuff. You tell me, Kenley Jansen, because he's the only big reliever that I really care about at this point.
Phillies,
Really? Okay. Bryant.
Seattle,
Trevor Story.
Yankees.
Okay, and we'll
No,
save
sorry, not Yankees. Not Yankees. No. You know what? let's talk Story and Correa together.
Okay, so yeah, so this brings us into the Red Sox portion of it because I think that I wanted to save the big guy for last, but I think it's fair to talk about him together at this point. I think we both agree because we both said it. What the hell is Chaim Bloom doing by sitting on this money right now?
Yeah, like honestly, I look at the state of this team, and I alluded to it earlier when I talked about the market not being great as it is. What are you doing sitting on $30 million worth of luxury tax space? I mean, it's not. I mean, they still need to add to their bullpen, and I'm sure they will.
But they're probably going to get bargain bin guys like they did last year.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
like,
like maybe like I think that the top of the barrel that they're shopping in right now is probably Colin McHugh or maybe Kenley if they want to go that
I
route.
thought Colin McHugh hated Boston. Didn't he say that?
No,
Am I
he hates
imagining this?
Carabas. He hates
Oh,
Carabas. He and Carabas
okay.
had some sort of beef going on. I don't think Colin McHugh liked. I don't think Colin McHugh hated it here. I think it was just
Okay, because I saw that they
Carabas.
were negotiating with him, and I could have sworn that he said something about like he never wants to be in Boston, he hated it here, or something like that. And I'm like, dude, you opted out for a season. If you hate it here, you hate it here. That's fine. But what are you doing negotiating with the Red Sox again? It makes no sense.
Yeah, I
But
don't
yeah,
know.
I think, like you said, $30 million in luxury tax base. You're the freaking Boston Red Sox. You should not be penny pinching at this point. You've stayed under the tax on purpose for the last couple of years to reset that threshold. Now is time to spend. There's
And
no
now it's
excuses.
higher.
This is what I said exactly. Now luxury tax is higher. Great point. This is what I said to you guys at the end of last season when we were trying to grade Chaim Bloom, and I said a lot going to depend on this offseason. He's actually got to spend and show that he's not going to run this like the Tampa Bay Rays of the Northeast. It's just it hasn't come yet. He's traded Hunter Renfroe for Jackie Bradley. Again, he's back. I cannot believe that. He went and signed Michael Waka, as Pedro would say.
I like the Walker signing. I like the Hill signing to an extent. I don't love the Hill signing, but it's okay as your 5 starter. I love, and after the Rodon deal, I love the Paxton contract, even though he won't be back till the end after the All-Star break.
Yeah, so you have a lot of these mediocre signings around the middle, trying to build out your rotation behind Sale and Evaldi. And obviously Erod's gone now, which is something that we haven't had to deal with since, 2014, 2015? So, I mean, I gotta ask, where's this money going? It shouldn't be going into John Henry's pocket, I'll tell you that much.
Shouldn't be going into the bullpen either. I am a staunch believer in not investing too much in your bullpen, which we're not going to really talk too much about this, but the White Sox signing Joe Kelly after signing Kendall Graveman, after trading for Craig Kimbrell,
And
after
having
already
Liam
having
Hendricks.
Liam Hendricks, like that's a lot of money going into
They're,
your bullpen, and I don't
they're
think the Red
trying
Sox
to
should do
build
that.
it like the 2017 Yankees, and they didn't win a World Series last I checked. They
Yeah, no,
just
they
didn't.
didn't.
You
They
need
were
good.
close though.
Yeah, they were close. You need good starting pitching to get it done. Yeah, you need to have like one or two big high leverage relievers that you can turn to in a pressure situation. But if you want to look at the last couple of World Series champions, Max Fried, the Nationals is probably the best example of a really crappy bullpen, getting it done with your starters, Corbin, Scherzer, and Strasburg. And then the Red Sox before that, crappy bullpen that, yeah, they had some guys step up, but again, largely did it with their starters. 17 Astros, I believe,
Porcello was
relatively
huge in the
similar.
bullpen.
Exactly, because Ken Giles was an absolute sieve on that Astros team that won the title. Like, you can go back, and, bullpens are very helpful, and while everyone's trying to pull their starter before the third time through, as you like to call it, starters still matter. You still got to get big name guys that are worth a lot of money and can shut people down in October. And I don't know why you continue to invest in bullpens when you could be spreading it to other areas of your roster. Now, I do want to address one of your takes that you had. I think in our group chat you may have tweeted it too, where you said you would be okay with Jackie Bradley playing center field every day for the Red Sox if it meant that you could get one of the two big name shortstops, that being Trevor Story and Carlos Correa. So I want you to kind of, expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Jackie Bradley Jr. is not going to be, a 60% below average hitter probably ever again.
We can hope not.
I don't know what happened in Milwaukee, but I think he won't be a league average hitter. He won't be an above league average hitter, but I think he'll be like a 10 to 15% below league average hitter. He's still a great defensive center fielder. So it's like at the end of the day, he's still probably a 1.5 to 2 win player if he's, playing every day. I'll take that if it means landing one of these big sharks at shortstop, because, that's a marquee position. And I tweeted this yesterday or last night. If you're the Red Sox, you're in a similar situation with Xander Bogaerts as the Patriots were with Tom Brady in 2019. You don't expect him to leave. He's still got years after this year on his contract, but he could opt out. It won't be the same as Brady in that regard, because I think Brady just voided the last, year or two of his deal. But Bogaerts can opt out of his contract. If he leaves, because again, everyone wants to assume, and I've talked to people who said Bogaerts wants to prioritize staying. Like he definitely wants to be here. But if he hits the free agent market, someone's going to get in his ear and tell him he's worth a ton more money than he is, as going into deep into his 30s as a shortstop.
as a
want to risk
shortstop, and
losing.
they'll tell him that too, which is important. It's one of the
Yep.
reasons that I think we all want one of these shortstops is to break up the infield side of Devers and Bogarts and move Bogarts over to second base. And I think Bogarts still likes it here enough that you can still convince him to move over to second base, and maybe
He said
even
he'd be open to it.
exactly. Maybe you give him just a very, very, very slight pay bump because let's be honest, he's on a steal of a contract for the offensive production that he has. Not for defense, but for offense, steal of a contract. What was it, 6 for 120? And we were all shocked because he signed it a couple of years before he was supposed to, and he's a Boris client. And we were all like, what is this? Scott Boris clients never do this, but he signed here. He clearly wants to stay here. Lock one of these shortstops down now, and then you can go to Bogarts and say, hey, look, you want 4 for 120 this time? We got the money. Luxury tax is still going up. We'll give it to you because, we want to still build around you going up the middle. And maybe he says yes.
I honestly think with Bogarts, because like I said, I've talked to some people. It's not like I've not talked to any sources in the Red Sox. I've talked to people who have sources with the Red Sox that say Bogarts does want to stay in Boston. So it's not like the extent like I went with Brady saying like, oh, he could leave. He still could, but he does want to stay here as long as they prioritize keeping him. But at the end of the day, wouldn't the best evidence, or not the best evidence, but the best way to convince Bogarts you want him to be here is one, open up negotiations on a new contract after the season, but two, put him at second base, have either Carlos Correa or Trevor Story. I'm praying for Carlos Correa. I don't think it'll happen, but I'm praying for it. And have a ridiculous lineup of Devers, Correa/Story, Bogarts, and then Dahlbeck at first base. And then the outfield, you'll have
Cassis
Verdugo.
even.
Cassis will probably be up mid-season. You got Verdugo, and then in center field it'll be Kike/JBJ, and then in right field, whatever you do there. And then obviously JD at DH and whoever the hell is catching that day, whether it be.
Does Schwarber factor into your plans here, or you think he's as good as gone?
I think he's as good as gone. I think he's going to an NL team.
Okay.
I think that's the guy who goes to Milwaukee.
Oh, really? I think that he might go back with the Cubs, but I don't know if the Cubs want to run it back. I don't know if the Cubs want to fully embrace the tank, but the Stroman deal kind of flies in the face of that, in my opinion. I thought that they were going to try and embrace the tank.
They signed Stroman, and then you're like, well, they got to be landing a marquee shortstop because, Nico Horner, I like the guy as a prospect, but woof.
And then they got Simmons.
And then I'm like, oh, so they're a huge Correa player or Story. Not enrolled Simmons for $4 million plus incentives. Exactly. But yeah. Anyway, the best way to convince Bogarts you want him around is to put as great of a team around him as humanly possible. So if he'd be almost foolish to leave, even if he doesn't get the best offer from Boston. But if he leaves, you have your shortstop. It's a lot easier to find bridge second baseman. Mind you, Nick York and Jeter Downs are both in the minor leagues. They're probably a year or so away anyway. So if you lose Bogarts, you could just plug one of them in at second, and you have Correa or Story at shortstop. You have assuming Bogarts opts out, which I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion he will, you have $80 million coming off the books next year in just 5 players. JD Martinez, David Price, Nathan Eovaldi, Jackie Bradley Jr., and Xander Bogaerts. 5 players making up $80 million with the tax going up.
That's some Maple Leafs type of cap management right there.
You can give Carlos Correa the exact contract he wants, which I think would be 10 and then $350 million. I think you could give him that. You can front load it if you want to. You can back load it if you want to. Whatever you want to do, you can do that. And you could still sign Bogarts after the 2022 season and extend Devers. I don't think you need to prioritize keeping guys like JD Martinez and Nathan Eovaldi anymore. I think you have enough guys in the minor leagues you're not going to miss on 7 top minor league pitching prospects. You're just not going to. One of them is bound to be a good pitcher.
So, the last thing I'll say, and then I think we probably got to wrap it up because we're pressed for time. I don't know if there's any real track record of the Red Sox giving out this type of contract, which is my one worry when it comes to signing one of these 2 guys, especially Correa, because I think he's going to be the one that commands the longer term, 10 to 12 years. But, we do have plenty of other baseball shows coming up, I hope, so we can kind of get into this when he decides where he wants to go. I still think Boston definitely remains firmly in the mix, if I had to guess, simply for the fact that, again, like we said, they have the money, and they've always been big swingers in free agency. Maybe not this big, But, you know,
Manny's the last one I could think of. I mean, Price to an extent, but a position player, Manny's the last one.
they've always been active though. They've rarely been dormant. And I know that this is a new GM, or chief baseball officer, I guess you can call him. So hey, chips on the table. Let's see if he what's it called? Pays up. Let's see if he follows through. Thank you.
Ultimately, to kind of put a bow on the free agent, rapid fire. I said Trevor Story to the Yankees out of the generosity of my heart, and I say generosity with air quotes, because I am like, in my brain, I'm convincing myself that the Correa market's been so quiet. The Red Sox are just going to swoop in and sign him like they did with Carl Crawford. Like it was like a four. I mean, I don't want to say it like that because then he turns into Carl Crawford. But
oh yeah, please let's not do that. Yeah, we're good.
Initials and everything.
Oh no, we're good. We're good.
But I think ultimately the Red Sox are going to be the ones to get Story, and I think Correa will end up with the Yankees. I think they're going to end up throwing a blank check on the table and saying, "What is it going to take for you to come here?" And money talks. Garrett Cole went there after Yankees fans gave him some crap when he was with Houston. They're going to do the same with Correa. They'll embrace him there. What I think, and I want to say this real quick about Red Sox fans not wanting Carlos Correa. I would love to hear a valid reason outside of he's a
cheater.
He's a cheater. Well, Alex Cora is your manager.
I hate that argument. It's so annoying.
And I hate to break it to you guys. Marwin Gonzalez was on that Astros team, and he was the guy who benefited the most from it. I think we're far beyond the point of caring about the sign stealing at this point.
They all far cheat. Beyond that. Get over it, guys.
They all do. If you think, the Red Sox literally got busted for doing it in 2018, and a lot of those guys are still here. Bogarts, Devers, Martinez, they're all here. Vasquez, he's here. Like Jackie Bradley's back. I mean, all these guys are here. So, I mean, at the end of the day, give me a reason other than he's a tool / he's a cheater. Because Bogarts said he'd move to second. So there's no real excuse. If the Red Sox don't sign him, it's because they either are too cheap to go deep into their pockets to bring him in, or they just flat out didn't want him, a la Justin Fields and the Patriots when we're all like, the trade up and get him, and the Patriots were like, we never wanted him. So
yeah, exactly,
it could be like that. But yeah, so we got to wrap it up here. I think pretty solid show. We only talked about a few things. We covered like 35
longer than our Patriots episode we did earlier this year with the two of us. I thought it was going to be more like that. We're sitting on 43 minutes. This is going to take forever to export. It's fine. It's fine. We're going to have technical magic. You'll see us on the YouTube.
All right, but that'll do it for this edition of Massholes with Mikes. Thank you to Jeremy for joining me to talk some baseball. So for him and for myself, Jordan Leandri, have a great rest of your night, everybody.